In this video, we're going to model a small rolling droid with plasticity, so stay tuned. Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and in this video, we are going to tackle modeling something similar to what we see on the screen, a small rolling droid, and we want to focus on using spheres and different ways in which we can use things like surfaces or sheets and some of the additional tools that might be helpful along the way. So to get started, we're going to begin a new document. We're going to get rid of this cube, and we're just going to make sure that we show the axes, X-ray is turned on, and I want to make sure that I'm showing edges and carry on modeling. So of course, the basis of all of this is going to be a sphere. Make it as big as you want, and then right-click to accept. The next tool that I'm going to take a look at is something called isoparam. Now, if you're familiar with Blender or working in polymodeling programs, oftentimes you insert edge loops. And we've done this before by using curves with knife tools. So for example, the line has a K knife tool option. So we're going to hit Control and R. We're going to hit Tab and Shift and the mouse wheel and click to accept. Now, these are facing the wrong way, and part of the isoparam thing with the sphere is that it's only going to go halfway in one direction around Z because it's actually revolved. So what we're going to do is select the entire object, and then we're going to hit R to rotate, and we're going to rotate this about Y. So we'll say Y on the keyboard and 90 and hit Enter, then right-click to accept. So now we can take this centerpiece and we can scale it down to whatever size we need. And you can see now we started to make our rolling droid shape. I'm going to add a couple more details. I'm going to take these edges and add a chamfer. So pull this in, right click to accept. Then I'm going to take this, Shift D to duplicate, right click to accept. And I'm going to do SS to scale it up. Now I'm going to scale it up until it's just about where those chamfers are. It doesn't need to be perfect. But what we have now is a sheet or a surface. So if we hide our solids, this is just a thin wall piece here. Next, we're going to hit 1 on the keyboard. We're going to use a horizontal line, right click to accept, and C on the keyboard to cut. This is going to separate it into a top and a bottom. I don't need the curve anymore, so I can get rid of that. And now we've got this top section and this bottom section. The bottom section we don't need for right now. We're just going to focus our attention on the top. And I'm going to hit 7. And note that when I'm using 7, this is a top view, and we're on what appears to be a temporary construction plane. However, if I use a corner rectangle and I snap to the center and hit Tab and begin drawing this rectangle, if I rotate this around, that's actually on top of my object, and that's not what I want. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to hit 7 again, but this time I'm going to click on top, which creates a custom plane. If I double click on the custom plane, and now I use a corner rectangle, once again, I hit Tab, and we just draw a rectangle here. If I right-click to accept and rotate this around, that's down on our custom construction plane. With this selected, I'm going to hit B on the keyboard and just round those corners off, then C on the keyboard and cut through this object. Then I want to delete the curve. Now, the reason that I did this is because I want to create more panelized features. I want to create a couple of individual pieces that are a bit removed or external from that inside piece. And we're going to do this by thickening these surfaces into solids. So we're going to select this top one, hit F on the keyboard to bring up my search, and I'm going to start to type in thicken. Thicken or thicken sheet, it's going to give us the same thing here. I'm going to go to my thickness and put in 0.05 and hit enter. And we can see that we were able to create a thickened piece. I'm going to do the same thing here. Start to type in thicken. If I start to type in thicken sheet, I can just enter it, 0.05, hit enter, it looks okay. Then I want to take this object, hit S twice, and scale it down just slightly. I also want to say G, Z, and move it up just slightly, just to give it a little bit of a difference from where it's currently sitting, just to make sure that we can really see that they're not in the same place. And then I can grab the edge and add a small chamfer or fillet if I want to. I can do the same thing to this edge here. And looks like I grabbed the bottom edge instead. Yeah, it's okay. So now we can definitely see that there is a difference there. Another thing that I want to do is I want to take these corners on the bottom and I'm going to fillet them. So I need to find them. They're pretty small, so you will need to zoom in a bit. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the back side. Hold down Shift to grab that, Shift to grab that, rotate it around. And I want to add an actual fillet here. I want to round them off. And the main reason I want to do that is, well, two reasons. I'm going to have tangency now as I pull a chamfer on this edge. And then when I bring back the other piece, it's going to give us a nice little division. So we definitely know that these are two separate pieces. Which brings me to the bottom piece. We're going to do F, start to type in thicken sheet. Again, we're going to use the same value, 0.05. And let's make sure that I enter 0.05. And make sure that it is going the same direction. In some cases, you might find that it might appear to go the other direction depending on the surface normal, but that looks fine. Right-click to accept. We're going to do the same thing to all these corners. So Shift-select all the small edges, pull this over. And I didn't input an actual value. I just did it visually. So I'm just going to make sure that it looks approximately right. And then, again, just make sure that it looks approximately right. So next thing I want to do is hit 1 on the keyboard. And once again, I want to create a new custom construction plane. Then I'm going to use my cylinder tool, which is at the center. Rotate this around, pull it out, and I'm going to create this as a new body for right now. So B for new body, right-click to accept. Now the main reason I want to do this is because I want to create a smaller and larger version of the cylinder that's going to be coming out. And we need to have an opening in it. So I'm going to duplicate this with Shift and D. I'm going to right-click to accept and then hit S twice to scale it up. Right-click to accept. And now I want to remove that. So we need to be a little bit careful here when we're talking about removing these objects. So if I select this and I do Q, and then I select these bodies, you see these are actually removing that from the cylinder. So the order of operations is wrong. So what we need to do is select these two bodies, Q, and notice that it's trying to remove this one here. So we need to do it one at a time. I'm going to select this body, hit Q, and remove that. But notice that we aren't able to do it out of both of them at the same time. So we need to use Keep Tools, or T, right-click to accept. And then when we do it down here and remove it, we don't need to keep the tool anymore. So now the original solid fits just inside of a small gap, and we can chamfer that opening if we want to. So let's select the front edge and pull a small chamfer there. We'll do the same thing down here. And again, just kind of looking at giving it some sort of difference. I can get off the custom plane now. O to offset, right-click to accept, pull that in, right-click to accept, grab these front edges, and create a chamfer. And you can see now, if we bring back the original solid, we have, sort of this little rolling droid. Now, we're not quite done. There's still a lot we can do. This piece on top, like all these extra pieces, these panels are separate. So there's room inside to add more detail. So you could add wires or cables or whatever you want inside of there. And then as you open things up, so for example, if we select this body, hit R on the keyboard, we're going to hit V for pivot, and I'm going to change the pivot point to somewhere back here. We can rotate this up as if something's coming out of it. So that piece can pop up on the top, rotating based on a pivot point, and then you can kind of see everything that's going on inside of here. But we want to add a little bit more detail to these wheels. We don't want them to just be smooth. So I'm going to add a small recess in them. Now the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to start by selecting this outside edge, hitting O for offset, and I'm going to offset it inward, right-click to accept. I'm going to do the same thing again, O, and offset it inward. And basically I want to create a flat section right there. Now this can be a little bit tricky, but we're going to follow a similar procedure. I'm going to hide some of these other solids that I don't need currently. We're going to hit 3 on the numpad. We're going to create a custom plane, double click on it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to select these edges. I'm going to rotate so we can see what's going on. And we're going to say Alt-D. Now Alt-D will allow us to take that edge, duplicate it, and press it down to our construction plane. So we're going to do Alt-D again, right click to accept. And if I hide this solid, you can see now we've got this piece here that we can use to remove it from the other part. So right click to accept, get rid of our curves. I'm going to move this in the X direction just to get it out of the way, get off my construction plane. And now I'm going to move this back. So G, X, and move it until it's set in just a little bit. Right click to accept, mirror it to the other side, right click to accept. And now I want to remove that from the original. So Q, then shift select both of these, right click to accept. And notice that it left this little piece here because I inset it a little bit too much. Just select that and hit delete, and it'll flatten that section out for you. Do the same thing on the other side. We're going to select that face, hit delete, and now we're able to remove it. So at this point, we now want to create some hardware that sits on that face. Now, we could directly model it on the face, but there is another tool that we can use. And to show that, I'm going to start by creating a small cylinder. I'm going to go ahead and draw it down here. And if we want to focus our attention on this, we can hit period on the keyboard. We also have the option to hit period again and hide all of the other objects. And this means that as we're playing around with this, it's going to be the focus and it's not going to have a rotation point that's way out in space. So it makes it a little bit easier for us to come in and add some detail. So we're going to round that off. Right click to accept, hit spacebar on this top face. Now by default, spacebar is going to allow us to cut through this object, so it makes it a little bit easier. Hold down shift and the mouse wheel to get more edges on our polygon. Pull this down, right click to accept, off the temporary construction plane and get rid of that curve. So we want to bring back that original solid. So if we zoom out, we can kind of see where it is. Now there are a couple different things that we can do here. We could take this and we could do Shift D to duplicate it, which allows us to make a copy, and then we could work on putting it where we wanted to. It doesn't really help us in this case. So if I go ahead and just move that copy around and delete it, the other option that we have is to do a copy and place. Now this is going to be Control and D on the keyboard, and then if we select the bottom face, this is going to allow us to place it, F to flip the orientation. I'm going to hit 3 on the numpad so I can kind of see where it's going to be placed. And right click to accept, escape, and then I can delete the original if I want. So this is still a separate solid object, but now I can do a radial array. I can make sure the cursor is in the correct orientation, and then now I have all this extra hardware. Before I deselect any of that, I'm going to use the group option. And I'm going to make this a hardware group. Then I want to select all of the hardware. So all of these pieces I'm going to select and mirror them to the other side because everything does have symmetry. Right click. And then I can take all of these new solids and drag them up into the hardware group. So now the benefit of this is I can hide all the hardware at the same time. I can also change the material of all of the hardware at the same time. So if you're going to be doing some visualization here in Plasticity, that can be handy. Now, if I bring back all the other little armored pieces, that top piece and the little cannon, we can kind of see that we've built something that has a lot of detail on it. I'm going to turn off X-ray and my coordinate system. I'm going to go into render and hide the edges. And this didn't take too long. We kept with the sphere, that main original shape, and we added some detail by just doing a handful of things in under 15 minutes. We could obviously spend a lot more time adding more detail. You can make more of these little panels. You can go in and detail maybe hinges or pivots on the inside if you want to work directly with those. But the main takeaway here is that we want to make sure that we understand how to work with these tools and these objects. Now, a couple of the commands we looked at, Shift D to duplicate. Now, this was pretty handy for duplicating an object or a surface, a face of a solid. We also looked at using Control and D, which was copy and place. That allowed us to place it normal to a selected face. And we looked at Alt and D, which allowed us to take an edge of a solid and project it down onto a construction plane. We started off using in this case, we use the ISO params. Now, ISO params is Control and R, and that allowed us to divide the object based on the UV directions. And we also took a quick look at the difference between using one of the default planes or a custom construction plane, how the curves are in different areas or different selections happen when you use those options. So those are the main tools that we looked at, including the radial array. We did a quick radial array on this, and mirror, and some of the other basic tools that we've seen before. If you have any questions on what you've seen here, then please let me know. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.